This segment is brought to you in part by the Canadian Historical Arms Society, owners of the Genesee Range, the premier recreational sport and training facility in Western Canada. See us online at historical-arms.com.
The Quiet Professional, a podcast about law enforcement, security, justice, and politics. We are digging deeper on the issues and going where the information takes us with access to experts and authorities. Welcome to The Quiet Professional. Hey everybody, welcome back. This is going to be a little more of a free-flowing episode today. We got a lot going on in current events. We're going to talk a bit about radicalization, and it's going to tie into a previous episode I did. So we'll get to that. And also we're going to talk about just how we discuss everything that's going on, the craziness of this world. For that, I got my friend here, Mubin Shaikh. He was last on the show February of 2023. I can't believe it's been that long already. So
what? Just felt like not too long ago.
I know it's probably because comment on each other's stuff all the time. So, but for anybody looking for that episode, is season 2, episode 12. A little background on Mubin in case you haven't listened to his stuff before or you missed him on the show before. So he is a former undercover human source for the Canadian Security Intelligence Service and agent with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Integrated National Security Enforcement Team. He was also involved with infiltrating ISIS social media networks from 2012 to 2018. He is a subject matter expert for the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff's Strategic Multilayer Assessment Team, and he's spoken to numerous government organizations. Mubin has a Master's of Policing, Intelligence, and Counterterrorism. He's a counter-extremism specialist with the Parents for Peace organization. I've had multiple of them on here. That is an amazing organization. And lastly, he happens to be featured in his own exhibit in the new International Spy Museum. So that's pretty cool. So welcome.
That is cool.
Did I see right on one of the, I think you had a post up, or maybe they had it. They have a wax model of you?
No, it's you've seen the post. It's actually a screen.
Oh yes, okay, the
that
screen
plays there's a loop of like flashes from the Toronto 18 case, like the arrests and like just some interesting stuff, and then I pop up there with some commentary. But in a glass case next to the screen is my the robe that I wore when I was in the training camp with those guys. So it's a camouflage Muslim robe with I think it's a green schmog or a schmog of some kind.
Yeah, I was like, I thought they had a wax thing there, but maybe it must have been the video, and then they were just had the clothing next to it. But
yeah,
that's next level if you get that. If you're getting wax models of you, I wanted to maybe we'll kind of start just talking about some of the current events and the craziness of the world. Man, right off the top. Is it even possible to have a critical discussion about any of this stuff anymore? Or have we all lost our minds to protests? Because that's where it looks like it's going, especially in the U.S.
Yeah, that's and not just in the U.S., in Canada as well, big time. Toronto in particular, where you're seeing a lot of these protests and whatnot. And, that's, again, that's a manifestation of the polarization that people are I guess suffering from, or in the context of, where people, it's tightly held or closely held beliefs, intimate beliefs about religion, ethnicity, nationality, and you can imagine how intensely people feel emotions on some of those topics. And so it is like almost like a form of tribalism, where it's like you're either in my tribe or you're not.
Yeah.
And if you're showing, there was a cartoon. It was like, it was a picture of like two armies who were meeting on the battlefield, and one, here it is. I don't know if I can show it on the screen, but it says here, there can be no peace until they renounce their rabbit god and accept our duck god.
Yeah.
And if you look at the photo, it's just like just to describe it for viewers who might be our listeners, it's basically, if you imagine a duck with its bill pointing left, well, if you just look at it the other way, it's actually the ears of a rabbit.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like the same. So that's basically where we're at. It's the polarization is so great that if you're not flying the duck flag, well then you're with the rabbits. You know what I mean? And you're the enemy. You're the other. So yeah, very good question. Are we able to have these conversations critically? I don't know. It's certainly not at the public level. At the public level, it's just, listen, you got to validate me and my cause, and that's it. Otherwise, you're on the other side. So
Yeah, I see people. It's almost like there's no room. You are either with me or you're the enemy.
yeah,
Like there's no grace given to anybody. There's no space for, I believe some of your stuff, but not all of your stuff. And then it's,
right.
yeah, well, you're on the other side then. I like the word you use other there because I was going to say a lot of the stuff that I've seen, I've been at some of these protests like for my work. And I would say, so prior guests, Arnaud Michaelis, when he talked about how they would radicalize people, part of that was othering. So getting the group identity was a big piece of that. And I feel like a lot of the stuff we see right now is that at mass scale. So
Yep.
somebody is able to push these narratives, whether it's bots or somebody's got like a million people sitting there on computers kind of farming this stuff out. Either way, I mean, we're getting some crazy narratives out there, and people are, I could say they're falling for it. But also, another word that you kind of used earlier, belief. Like people are, they have this hardcore held belief, and a lot of them grew up here. So even if it's issues in the Middle East, we have people that are born and raised in Canada, and they are very certain they know the history of everything and all the politics and all the backdoor stuff going on, and it's pretty scary. So, what are your thoughts? Like, how do you combat something at this scale? Because I guess you work a lot of one on one. How are we going to get through something at a big scale like this?
Yeah, I mean, we're smack dab in the middle of narrative warfare is
Mm,
what we're dealing with. And you were saying like people who are born and raised here, but you got to ask yourself what kind of narrative have they been subscribing to the whole time they've been here? We assume, right, that
mhm.
people are here, and this is something that I think a lot of Canadians realize is one, we don't promote enough of a Canadian narrative.
Yes.
Right? I mean, there's a whole question of what is Canadian even mean? What is
Yes.
Canadian culture, quote unquote? And think about it. Like there are people who are born and raised here, but they have no affinity to Canada and Canadian institutions and the Canadian narrative, if you will. And this is true for people across the spectrum. Doesn't matter what background they come from or whatever. They they subscribe to narratives along other lines, right? Whether it's religious lines, ethnic, nationalist, whatever, religious. Um, it's usually in contradistinction to the Canadian one. So you could have somebody who lives here 45 years and hasn't learned to speak English,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? They could be here their whole life, born and raised, went to Western schools, had Western friends, and their narrative, their allegiances are somewhere else, or their priority is somewhere else. And so that's basically what we're dealing with, and especially when when you're talking about religious based conflicts, at least as they appear to be, uh, how do you don't fight that,
Mm.
you cannot fight it. All you can do is try to influence it in some way or another. And, when things are happening at the scale that they're happening, I mean, the only thing that can stop that or influence that is either, I would think, high level statements by politicians or leaders of the community or whatever it is, and then let that trickle down, or the secondary effects of enforcement on these large groups of people.
What do you mean by secondary?
So meaning that the government will react by some kind of enforcement mechanism, and as a result of that, they will modify their behavior.
Mm.
Say that, oh, okay, you know what, like, I don't want to be on a CSIS watch list, you know what I mean, and be going out there and whatever. Not saying to anybody that you would automatically get on a watch list just because you're protesting, but if you're waving a Hamas flag and you're wearing a Hamas headband, you should probably be on a CSIS watch list.
Yeah. So, do you think is there a reason that the West is so susceptible to this stuff, or are we more? Would you say we're more susceptible? And then, is there a reason
Yes.
why we are?
Yes, we are more susceptible. And the reason for that is because of the freedoms that we have in this society.
Okay.
Freedom of speech, right? Very basic, standard rights in democratic societies.
Association. Yeah.
Yeah, you can
Religion.
be a
Yeah.
racist. You can think Al Qaeda is the best thing for the Middle East since hummus.
Mhm.
You can believe these things. It's not illegal, right? You can even celebrate terrorist attacks in other countries. It's not illegal.
Which we do see.
The glorification,
Yeah.
yeah, which
Yeah.
is exactly what we're seeing. And the glorification is a different thing. It's to say that, yes, I love that attack. They should do that here. Well, that latter part of it is what makes it a criminal offense. But you can say the first part of it all day long. It's not illegal.
Hmm.
And when you allow that, when you allow people to have these, to hold those kinds of views, is it that much of a surprise then that people get out there, they protest, they develop their, ecosystems around it, not just networking and companionship and camaraderie and all of that, but also even the economics related to it, the fundraising, the product purchasing, all of that stuff can now be mobilized. And unfortunately, out of that environment is where you will get extremists and terrorists.
Yeah.
Extremists and terrorists, by their nature, are always fewer in number. Although, I guess it depends on how you want to define certain terms. But if you define the way I do, extremism as the belief that violence in the public space is okay, we have a lot of extremists because they all believe that the attack October 7 was okay. And you saw the way in which people came out and celebrated immediately after the attacks,
Mhm.
right? Not even and this is something that shocked me really, and is why the so-called pro-Palestine movement is so closely connected to terrorist movements, is because you didn't hear anybody say, "Well, hold on, we don't believe that that's okay to do, but we condemn that. Now, let me tell you how bad Israel is." You could have gotten away with that and it would have been fine. But the fact that they just went to the, let me tell you how bad Israel is, they didn't say a word. They didn't condemn at all, even superficially.
Mhm.
If anything, shockingly, and I was legitimately shocked, genuinely shocked that people thought that they could even get away with saying this stuff. And they can, because again, it's part of freedom of speech. When the attacks did happen, they called it resistance.
Yeah. Does it justify it?
So this is justified resistance.
Yep.
And it's like, hold on, this is you're kidnapping babies, old people, sexually assaulting, young women. Like that's acceptable because it's resistance. Because once again, in that otherization, in that polarization, the enemy is demonized to such an extent that any atrocity upon them is acceptable.
Yeah. Well, I was wondering too, like you kind of brought it up there, calling this out from within the community. This is one of the things that I want to say is maybe difference between Western culture and maybe the Middle East, where here you might see more of like if someone's walking around doing Nazi salutes and wearing the regalia and stuff, people will go, "That guy is screwed up," and we don't believe that, and you'll probably have some people attack them. But when we see extremism, like you're saying, we don't necessarily see the public calling out or the public shaming by Muslim groups of the people doing that. So when those like I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's certainly not as public and as pushed out there. Maybe you have more examples, but it's just something I haven't seen in the mainstream media. I haven't come across it on social media. So where is that? Because all I see is if someone then calls out, "Oh, hey, you shouldn't be," like you're saying, October 7th, you shouldn't be saying those things. You shouldn't be supporting Hamas. Well, then it's Islamophobia or you're some ism or something. It's like, well, if you don't want people to think, that this whole group is extremists,
Exactly.
then why are you not making it public and, supporting law enforcement, telling the politicians to stop with the identity politics and putting everybody into groups? And they're the ones also calling everybody isms and saying you have phobias. It's like, where is that from this
Yeah.
side of things?
Very good question. And I don't shy away from the fact that I found a lot of this denialism in the Muslim community at large back in the Toronto 18 days, right?
Mm.
When I was involved in that case, and it was quite an eye-opening lesson for me to watch how the community squirmed and wiggled its way around and through and my theory goes like this. My theory is that minority communities are like in a competition with each other to show who's the good minority community, and of course in that context, everybody's rainbows and lollipops, right? There's nothing wrong, nothing to see here. Forget about it.
Put on your best face. Yeah.
And if you highlight wrongdoing that's being done in the community members who feel the community is under siege will interpret that as reinforcing the siege. So you're a black sheep if you do that. You're ostracized because you're making it worse for the community, quote unquote. Irony lost on them completely that actually this is what makes it worse for you. And this is a very good question. Like, if you want to denounce or you want to separate your cause from the extremists and the terrorists, all you got to say is that, hey, look, we're not with the extremists and the terrorists. They're wrong. Their tactics we don't believe in. But like I said, I am sad
Hmm.
that the Muslim community, all these guys who are out marching and running interference for all this stuff, they couldn't even muster the courage to say that.
Yeah.
If anything, they'll say, well, why should we even have to denounce that? We're not, doesn't, why are you assuming that we're for it? So it's silence now, right? That
Hmm.
way you don't have to say anything. So I think the pressure should be put back on these communities, is that if you're telling us that you're actually not pro Hamas, why aren't you telling us that this then that? Like, why don't you say we're against Hamas?
Yeah, go march with those other groups though, right? Like I the thing that I really like seeing is when you have uh people from the Israeli side, the Palestinian side, or any other place over there that they get together and they go, you know what? We're over here in Canada or we're over here in the US and we came here for a better life and we can live and coexist and you know, why don't they work more together instead of just we're all gonna go out and if we see the other person's flag out there, it's like, here comes an ass kicking. It's like, well, that's just making people you're reinforcing any of the bias and the stereotypes that people
Yep,
might have about
exactly,
that. So,
exactly. It's ironic because I was just at a conference there in Bulgaria. We were talking about that as a NATO conference on NATO workshop on de-radicalization, and they actually looked at football clubs, soccer clubs,
okay.
right, and the extremism in football and the soccer,
Yep.
where same thing. You see if the guy's wearing the shirt of the other team jersey, he's gonna get beat up. He's gonna get trash thrown on him or whatever or whatever. Like, it's that same otherization and even dehumanization of the other, because you need to justify why you're against these people.
Mhm.
Because normally and naturally, we know that we have a feeling that we should probably not be like that. We should try to be generally nice and peaceful with people. But if you can justify not being that, well, then it makes it all that much easier, right?
Mhm.
And especially if you can say, oh, well, well, you can't be nice to them because, and then you have to add something terrible that they've done. I mean, you're this, you're a genocide supporter, you're, what I mean, or turn regular words into bad words. You're a Zionist. I mean? I'm not against the Jews. I'm against Zionists because the term Zionist has been made into that bad term, that label that justifies aggression onto that person. It's not normal for that person to be a Zionist.
Yeah.
Right? So back to your question about people. I mean, yeah, they left their countries, but that doesn't mean that they suddenly, they also got rid of their allegiances
Yeah.
to the goings on in those places. So
Yeah.
that's why those conflicts follow us back, because the people hold on to them. They hold on to the views, the beliefs, the narratives surrounding those causes, right? And so it doesn't change.
I find some of the language that's used with even with criminal stuff. So I find the language that is used not helpful. So some of the extortions we had here and over in Ontario, it was with the Indian community. And they keep calling these things like it's the South Asian community. And all I'm thinking is like, well, I don't see any Vietnamese people in there. Like where exactly? And I don't believe the language that gets used in this soft political speak and kind of going around the issues, I don't think it helps the community. I don't think it does them any benefit. And what's funny is you'll get officers of Indian background or that's their heritage, born in Canada, but their families trace back to there. They're the most forward about it. And they're like the maddest about it. And then all these other people are like, ooh, I gotta, speak real softly about it. Like, I don't think we're gonna give people, when then it comes to the protests and stuff, I don't think we're gonna give them the proper resources. We're not gonna give them the proper uh, time and speak to their cultural issues because there are differences in there. We're not gonna do that if we're not having real conversations. Going back to the earlier points, I think a lot of this starts with the politicians. One, because they set the tone. They've got the voice that reaches the most people at one time, but they're scared because they're going to lose a voter base. and and then they also are the policymakers. So if we want something enforced or we don't want something enforced, it starts there. Police are down the line from that, intelligence agencies down the line from that. The people at the top, they set the policy of where we're going and what we're doing. It has to start with them. So like, that I think that's where we need to have the most influence. And it's very hard right now to get a collective voice because everybody's just screaming and shouting at each other.
Yeah.
So
I mean, this is, yeah. And I guess this is like using imprecise terms, right? Like practitioners like ourselves who are, we don't care about the politics, right? And like, when they say politically correct, I love reminiscing that in high school I had this button that said nothing political is correct. Okay.
okay.
And then when you're defining things on the basis of political platforms, you're you're running into problems, right? This is where all this dancing around comes, and it's like, oh, blah blah blah. Like we're gonna use this term because it's so general enough that there's no specific group that we're highlighting, and therefore we're not going to be at the receiving end of their wrath,
Yeah.
right? So for example, in the UK with this grooming gangs, right? The grooming gangs report came out, and they're like Asians. You know what I mean? It's like, really? Asians?
Yeah.
Like that's a huge swath of people.
So it's
You can't
Russians.
be yeah.
you
Well,
know,
you can't be more precise. Like,
yeah.
and in the case of grooming gangs, I put out a post too recently about, yeah, it's a subset of Pakistanis,
hmm
right? It's not Indian Muslims, it's not African Muslims, it's not Arab Muslims. It's a subset from the Pakistani community that's overwhelmingly responsible for those acts.
Yeah. Well, and if we want to address that group, then, right, it's like, okay, so I'm going to narrow it down, make it specific. Now, what do I need to do to address that group based on their culture, based on how things work, the family dynamics, whatever speaks to them? Like we have to be we I think we really have to pinpoint problems a lot more to deal with them. And then people also know what they're dealing with, general public, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I think the public deserves to hear honesty, right? We don't. They don't need. Maybe politicians and others have decided that double speak and snake speak is the best way forward for them. I despise it. I despise it largely because it's just factually inaccurate.
Yeah.
And like practitioners who are all about like doing it right and accurately, define the terms accurately, use the right words, the right terms, right? That's how you, I think, serve the public by telling them this is actually what's happening, right? Rather than, well, it's like this, it's like that. This doesn't help anybody, So, and then even back in our Canadian context, where it's the same thing, right? And again, because certain things are so connected to particular voting bases and voting demographics, especially with the protests that we're seeing now. I mean, if like I'm just thinking to myself, you know, um, like Muslim groups are completely silent at the anti-Semitism that has exponentially increased in Canada.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, these organizations, the leaders of whom were given positions in the government as, special envoy to combat Islamophobia, for example,
Mhm.
uh, you don't hear them say anything about what's happening to Jewish people. But you will hear from Jewish people if a Muslim gets attacked, because for them, they're across the board. They're condemning it across the board because they realize that whether it's a Muslim or a Hindu or a Christian or a Jew, we have to call it out, like so that it's equal across the board. So that when X community has faced an attack or whatever, we can all come around and we can all condemn it the exact same way because this is what we would do if it was another group.
Well, and you know what? Maybe I'll add on that too, especially for the politicians. I think this is where the lack of a Canadian identity really comes in because when you're put in that position, you work for Canada. It doesn't matter what group is doing something on the other side of the world. You speak as a Canadian, and that means
Yeah.
you condemn it on both sides, like you're saying. But they are like, I don't know, that's still of this community.
They're absolutely silent. This is what it's bothered me for so long that when something happens to Muslims, you want everyone to condemn it. You want to have this and you want to have that. And and everyone should be moved to action. But then when it's somebody else, you don't. So are you really there for the greater good, or are you really there just to protect your tribal interest? And
Yeah,
then, it bothers me because am I going to wait until the Muslim community is, because being Muslim, am I going to wait until Muslim shops are being attacked because of something that's happening in the Middle East? We went through this when the whole ISIS thing was happening, right? Everyone was like, "Oh no, no, don't blame us. We're not ISIS. We're not." And we rightfully condemned people who did try to lump the whole community into the same group. So now you're seeing this happening to Jewish people all over the place. It's insane. Like
yeah,
if this was happening to any other group, like the Muslim groups, man, oh man, you'd be hearing about it. There would be this, there'd be that, but these groups are now silent, right? Like, what are they? I don't understand. Like, I guess ultimately they are there only to protect their own. And it's really not about the larger public safety perspective, which is what we should be promoting.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. One of the aspects I kind of wanted to get your opinion on was how do you speak about this to your own children? So when you're telling them, how you're going to carry yourself through the world and portray yourself to others, but also educate them on what it's like to be a Muslim or how people might perceive you, like all the stuff that comes with it. How do you tell them to kind of carry themselves as they grow up and go off into this crazy world?
I was making a joke about I'm a big believer in social engineering. of children, and parents are that's their primary job description. I mean, is to raise good human beings. And this is something that I have seen in my life through growing up in the community and seeing the hyper religiousness of a lot of this, a lot of the training, if you will, that's given to kids. They're basically just, it's like in many cases forced, right? But then I guess parents, that's what we do. We force our kids to, because what do they know? They're kids, right? But in this hyper religiousness that I saw growing up, I deliberately went the other way. I was like, I'm not forcing anything on anybody. I'm not going to put you in a Quran school like I was put into. You need to be a good human being first, and being a good Muslim or Christian or whatever is easy. It's very easy, because I have seen many people who are considered to be good Muslims, quote unquote. They pray 5 times a day. They do this. They do that. They're the worst of people. I would never want them as my neighbor. Okay. In fact, when my old place that I lived at, next door to me was this, mean Muslim guy. And next door to him was this Iraqi Christian. And, and I got along very well with him. I made it a point, because he was Christian, to chat. And he once told me, he goes, man, he goes, the difference between you and this guy next to me, night and day,
Yeah.
night and day. And why? Because again, that attitude and being a good person and being like that. So with my kids, I'm brutally honest with my kids, right? I have no filter when it comes to my kids, right? Well, outside public talk, try to be diplomatic. I say what I need to say, and I'm still pretty open and straightforward even when I speak publicly. But with my kids, I tell them straight, like the reality of what I have seen growing up myself through my own experience. There's a great quote by Khabib Nurmagomedov,
Hmm.
who great role model for Muslim youth in particular.
UFC fighter for anybody who doesn't
UFC
know.
fighter,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, MMA fighter, and he. So in Islam, there are two primary sources: the Quran and Sunnah. The Quran is the speech of God, and Sunnah is the demonstrated example of the Prophet, peace be upon him. And so Khabib says to the young people in particular, he's like, people, they don't read Quran and Sunnah. They read you.
Yeah.
So conduct yourselves accordingly, right? Be good to people, be tolerant to people. This is what I deliberately teach my kids, that um and I know what I'm doing. I'm doing it deliberately. I know obviously the influence that I have over them. They see me, I'm going here, I'm going there, I'm talking here, I'm talking there. And then they see me, the real me. I talk to them in a very real way. And I'm very relaxed as a parent, as a dad, very relaxed. It's like, oh, you want to hang out with your friends and this, that, and the other? No problem. Invite them over,
Mhm.
right? We have an outside area. You guys can chill there. There's a TV screen you can bring out there. There's a barbecue out there. Do whatever you need to do, because I'd rather them be doing that in my backyard than somewhere else, right? It's like
Yeah.
everywhere is so dangerous, or talking about even how I modified my own behaviors. Like there was I remember reading, it was not too long ago, but like all these stabbings on the TTC, and like some 16-year-old kid who was there with his friend, and just some, usual story, mental ill guy who fell through the cracks. Now he's riding the bus with you or the subway with you.
Hmm.
And then this guy just ends up stabbing this kid in the chest and kills him right then and there.
Mm.
I was like, you know what? Disturb me, interrupt me. I will
Yeah.
drive you if you
Yes.
need to go somewhere. Okay. Like, so I really, and especially the security background stuff, I've taught them really well, what to look for and how to behave and how to conduct yourself in threatening environments and where you need to escape and all those things. But at the end of the day, these controversies over what's happening, because they're also, eating and feeding from social media, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't look at their phones. I don't know what their algorithms have been conditioned to kind of bring their way. But once in a while, one of them will, hey, what do you think of this? Hey, what do you think of that? Like,
That's good they
yeah,
ask though, right? It's important
yeah,
that they, I guess, feel comfortable enough to come to you and ask that.
yeah.
So you've obviously laid some groundwork there where they're like, okay, I
I've
can
created the
do this.
conditions for them to
Yeah.
to ask. It's like always, you never. I'm a big believer in questioning and being critical and understanding why, and even with the whole religious stuff, like, I want them to know why we believe what we believe. You know what I mean? There's a very logical, there's good evidences as far as we're concerned. And once in a while, it's actually the stuff that he sees online, or some of my kids see online, that they then bring to me. And they're like, yo, is this true? Do Muslims really believe this? And then it'll be some jerk off Muslim who's
Yeah.
got a channel and he's saying some crazy stuff. And then I got to be like, well, I mean, here's what, and then break it down for them. Or another case, like my 17, or he's 18 now, he does Muay Thai
Yeah.
boxing, right? And he's like, this kid's like alpha guy, right? So he's all about, and so he was, I guess, what's his name? Um, oh my God, the brothers. Oh, my brain is the two brothers that were in Romania.
Oh, Tate.
Andrew
Yeah, Andrew
Tate, yeah.
Tate. Yeah.
And so, he's like, and he's coming to me with, he's like, he comes to me with, come on, man. Like, some of the things this guy says it makes sense and it's true, right? It's not all wrong, right? Very good question that he asked. And this is the mistake also I think parents and others make, is trying to say, oh, these guys are evil and don't even listen to it, right?
Mhm.
It's like, that is inadequate as a response.
You need the why in there.
It's an inadequate to tell a young kid who's inundated with this stuff, don't look at it.
Mhm.
Like, he's gonna look at it, he's gonna listen to it. His buddies are gonna be telling him about it. His buddies are gonna want him to engage with it. How is he gonna do that?
And that's not giving them the critical faculties to actually look at something and examine it and make up their own mind of why they should or shouldn't believe in something. So you want them to have that skill. I mean, that's like you're saying at the beginning there, using your own experience. I mean, you've obviously got more life experience than most people have, but everybody does have life experience to some degree, and they can pass that on to their kids or young adults. Whoever you're in front of, if it's like if you don't have your own kids, you're gonna have a nephew or a niece or somebody that you come across, a younger cousin. And it's like you need to explain things, because if you don't explain it, someone else will explain it, and they might not be doing it in such a great way. It's gonna lead to bad stuff.
Yeah, even with this, like the Andrew Tate thing, like I said to him, and I this is how I teach I model the critical thinking, because I verbalize the question that would come in my mind. So I was saying to him, and just to pick on Andrew Tate for a moment, I was like, I'm like, here's a guy that is trying to give you advice on how to be the right kind of man. Okay. And he gives you advice on relationships, how to raise a family, how to do this and how to do that. I'm like, has he raised a family?
Exactly what I was thinking. Has he done any of it?
Has he done any of that stuff? Like, why did you take him as a role model? And especially, because some time ago he claimed to have converted to Islam. And of course, I was like, oh God, we don't need these people. We have enough crazies. We don't. And then I told him, I was like, this degenerate is promoting himself as an example for Muslims. Like, he all his fame and all his stuff is all gathered through unlawful and sinful activities, you know, exploiting women and this and that. And this is all against Islam. And so, how can this guy be a role model for Muslims? Ask yourself that, right? Like, he's going to tell you how to raise a family or how to get a girl, for example.
Mhm.
It's like, you know,
I think it further it kind of exacerbates the problem of people seeing Islam as incongruent with Western society. Then, so all of a sudden they go, like, look at this. You literally can't have this in this place because, they act like this or think like this or do these things. And it's like, well, that's the extreme version. Maybe you have more people in that extreme category at this time for whatever reason. But I mean, I think it makes that problem a lot harder for the people who are trying to coexist, that are trying to get along and live peacefully. Makes their job way harder. Kind of going back to the part of like, well, where are those groups calling that out? Is it legitimate to say, or maybe that's not the word, but only one that's coming to mind, but is it legitimate to say, like, would people be afraid to call it out because that violent capability exists, or at least in a bigger group? So they think, okay, if I go and call out radical Muslims, there's a lot more of them, so I could be subjected to, I could be subjected to the violence.
I don't think it's that. I don't think it's fear of violence, at least not in the Western context. I mean, this is certainly true in the Eastern context, Middle Eastern context. I mean, you have people, protesting Hamas in Gaza.
Mhm.
Okay. And I mean, they're paying the price for it. Some of them, right? They get tortured, they get executed.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the real deal people, right? Who do call it out, right? And then here's the irony is that here in the West, where you're safe, they don't call it out, right?
Well, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's over here, they're not calling it out. It's like, well, if you have nothing to fear in that sense, in the physical violence
Yep.
sense, then what is going on?
Well, the answer is simple. The answer is that they are supporters of these groups.
Mm.
I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I'm being open. They support these groups. They are happy when these groups commit attacks. They are happy when with because you could see that obviously right after the attack, there was no condemnation. There was celebration.
Yeah.
And then there were people who were like, you know what I mean? Like it was like their hill that they were gonna die on. And then when some of these like academics and others, public people who got caught up in the in the success of the attack and basically posting online how like their justification how it was okay,
Mhm.
and then oh no, I lost my job. Oh well, surprise. And then they were like, but even though I've been, punished, I'm not going to because and then they feel they need to double down on it and be proud of what they've done. These are people who are too far gone, right? They've come to that point and unfortunately for them, you can only wreck their life for them to understand that, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. I wrecked my life.
Yeah.
Right. But just coming back to what you're saying about, like, there, I mean, I don't know what kind of condemnations, because I did see one condemnation, which was, I think it was because this you'll get from more secular minded people. So let's say in the pro Palestine context, and I believe it was in the pro Palestine context where some guys drove by with a big, it had the creed of Islam on the flag. There's no God but Allah, Muhammad is the messenger, alayhi salam. But it was you gotta know how these flags work. This is the whole thing with religious extremists. They hijack the symbols of mainstream Islam.
Mhm.
So that statement, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, is the creed of Islam. It's like it's what you say to declare your faith. There's no God but God and Muhammad is the messenger. But if it's okay, that's the creed. Now, what Al Qaeda and Taliban did is they made a black background flag with white writing and a white background flag with black writing.
Mhm.
And those were their flags that they used. And then you get Saudi Arabia that has the same creed on it and it's got a sword underneath it. So that's the national flag of Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
If it's in a green backdrop and white text with a white sword outline. So is it illegal to fly any of those flags?
So it's the twisting and the contorting of the
But you
message.
see though, but here's the thing. Yeah, but what makes it so I think hard, obviously, like enforcement wise, is like, well, they could just say, listen, this is just the creed of Islam that I'm flying. What do you mean Al Qaeda Taliban?
Yeah.
Oh, I just happen to be using the exact same flag that they use. Anyways, in this case, the guy came out with this white flag with the black writing, and he was yelling Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And they actually called them out. Like these guys were, and I saw the video. But again, these are rare instances, or if they are happening, we're not seeing it. Um, and it's just like remember the convoy stuff
Mhm.
and the swastika flag, right? It was like, well, it was like, are they Nazis? But like how, it's and people were condemning it. People were saying, "Hey, you're making us look bad. You're gonna tie us into stuff that we want nothing to do with." So this stuff always happens in these contexts. But in this, what I think is more problematic in the pro-Palestine, so-called pro-Palestine context, is because of the presence and activities of religiously minded groups, at least those who claim that they're Muslim and they're not. I mean, or their Islam is deviant because of what they're doing. Uh, killing innocents, targeting innocents. They're committing tactics that even the Islamic sources condemn.
Yeah.
Right. I posted another thing about the former dean of Sharia at the Islamic University of Gaza wrote a fatwa against Hamas, saying that they broke all kinds of rules of Islamic law,
Hmm.
right? Islamic rules of engagement. It's a very, for him to do that was like, that was guts for him to do.
Yeah, he's putting his life on the line.
He's so well known and so respected that nobody really did anything against him.
Hmm.
But kind of let others know that, so it's this weird dynamic where in the Middle East, people behave in one way and whatever, but then in the West, it's the other way. For example, like now we got people protesting like support, like hands off Iran.
Yeah.
Like really, like we're at the stage where like we're actually protesting in support of this regime that's done all this horrible stuff.
Well, did you see? I think it was the LA Sheriff's Department. They put out that like,
Okay.
"Hey, we're sorry to the families of Iran that were involved in the
Oh
bombing."
yeah.
I
But
was
I
like,
I wonder though. I know I did see that it was the LAPD thing about whatever, and in one sense, in one look at it, it does look like a typical police post regarding community,
mhm,
communities. But remember, in LA, in surrounding areas, there's a big Iranian population, Persian population, and they're not religious types. Like they're like pro Shah type Iranians,
okay.
and so I'm even wondering if actually what was that for? Was it for just support for families who are not pro regime at all, but who have families?
Yeah, it came out after the bombing, like when they dropped it
You
on
have the
the nuke
nuclear
sites.
sites.
And I was like, what families are around the nuke sites?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
if
yeah,
you
yeah,
look at
yeah,
the pictures, like they went straight in. They're very clear holes. Like the bombs went in and all the way through the
yeah,
mountain. So it's like, who are they speaking to?
yeah.
And then I took that as when they posted that, I think it was more to just try and quell some uprising, some things going on in the community because they think they're gonna have the hands off Iran protests. So they're just putting that out to try and be like, hey, we're sorry over here.
Well, yeah, and I mean, it should not be that much of a surprise that it's the same folks doing the, hands off Gaza protests that are doing the hands off Iran protests because Iran is behind all of this stuff. Iran is funding Hamas and Hezbollah and all these groups, Palestinian Islamic Jihad and Hassan brigades and all these groups. It's all Iranian orchestrated, right?
Yeah.
So surprise, it's the same.
Yeah.
Now, of course, they're worried about Iran because that's the head of the snake,
Well, that's what
right?
something I wanted to ask you about is I see a lot of posts online right now where people are losing their minds about Trump dropping the bombs, and people go, "You're gonna put
More
us."
opposition to Trump than anything else.
Yeah, and it's like, well, you're gonna put us into World War III, or you started a war. When I talk to some very smart people, they go, "We've been at war with Iran, whether you know it or not. It's not putting
Since
boots
the
on the
80s.
yeah, it's not putting boots on the ground, but it's terrorist financing. It's tied into organized crime. They've got groups
Yep.
down in South America, Central America.
Narco trafficking.
Yeah,
Yep.
cyber attacks. Like y- you know, this has been going on for decades, and now people want to
Yep.
say a bomb got dropped. This is the start of it. You're way, way behind.
These people are, I mean, there's a lot of things going on, right? Like obviously opposition to Trump, and so everything gets spun in that manner, right? Like it's used as an anti-Trump strike point, right? That, oh, Trump said he wasn't going to do this. Trump said blah blah blah, and so it's all about being anti-Trump. And again, I don't care about the politics. I'm indifferent in one sense. I have disdain for politics really when it comes to that. And like I said earlier, when your decision making and criteria is based on political platforms, you've lost. Like I can't trust you. Like I know your stuff is not going to be accurate and objective.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, so looking at the strikes on Iran and all this stuff, and people thinking, and people live in la la land in many cases. They live in la la land. They think, they love this idea. I think it's a lot of it is projection, right? They want to believe that if it's just diplomacy, let diplomacy take its course. Like what did
Yeah.
diplomacy do for you in Syria, for example? Iran was, turban deep in Syria.
Mhm.
I mean, almost 20 million people displaced. Remember the whole refugee crisis out of Syria? Well, that was all fomented by them in Russia.
Yeah.
Okay. So with what Iran was doing, did diplomacy do anything about that? No, it didn't. Did diplomacy do anything about Iran basically taking over Yemen and turning it into a Houthi-run state? No, it didn't. Right? So people talk about, oh, if this, if that. Like, I think honestly, it comes to a failure to understand the adversary, and
Yes.
what it actually is and how it behaves. When you have a country that's saying death to America, death to Israel, curse on the Jews, do you think you can actually give these people worldly carrots that they're going to take? Like, I cannot take people like this seriously.
Yeah, I think they
I can't.
believe that they can change the mindset of them. And it's like
Yeah, good
they
luck.
just want to live in peace. Well, they might want to live in peace, but they also
No, they
don't
don't.
want you to
No, they
have it.
don't.
Okay, they don't want it at
They
all.
do not want to live in peace.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't want to live in peace. They've shown exactly what they want, right? And you can even the narrative again, and like it's like different layers of it, right? Like yes, there's like religious ideology. For example, even just on the Iran topic, there's like a competition going on in the Muslim world. You have the Sunni Arabs, you have the Shia Persians, and then you have the non-Arab Turks.
Mm.
And these three are always jockeying for, influence in the Muslim world. Who's the most Muslim of them all,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, and they show, oh, I'm the one that's going to destroy Israel. I'm the one that, and so they get favor because that's what people want to see, I guess,
Mm.
and so they promote themselves as whatever. And then there's competition, obviously, between the Shia Persians and the Sunni Arabs, right? Iran's not a buddy of Saudi Arabia; they're competitors,
Yeah.
right? Each one claims the other is, not the real Muslim, right? So, so there's that competition, and then there's like just looking at greater competition that's happening in their region. So you have Russia that backs Iran. So surprise, Iran is our adversary, right? They're not looking for, to live peacefully with everyone else. They're looking for hegemony in the region, right? They
Mm.
want to be the power of the region. So all of these factors taken together explains and allows us to understand why country X does what they do. And then it allows us, once we understand their operating procedures, if you will, then we can understand, well, what can be done with them, what will happen. And then you get people again, like lazy analysis. It's like, it's going to be like Iraq. It's not like Iraq,
Yeah,
right?
not even
Like
close.
I made it a post too about this, right? Like in Iraq, you had a minority Sunni ruling over oppressive minority Sunni leader over a majority Shia population, right? So when this guy got taken out, well, guess who was waiting to take over? And they did. Flip the script in Syria. You had a minority oppressive Shia ruling over a majority Sunni. What happened? Right? Libya, you had, Gaddafi was supporting and patronizing all these jihadist militias, basically like a ring model that would around his compound, all these jihadi militias, and they were able to smuggle and make their own money, doing their own things, this and that. Okay, so when you took him out, guess who took over, right?
Yeah.
Iran is not like that. It's not a minority that's ruling over a majority. There's no militias that are there. It's nothing like Iraq, Libya, Syria, Afghanistan, right? So people, again, they think, oh, it's yet another war by America and it's going to be like all the others. You have to look at all these things in their own unique contexts, right? And I just wanted to say, like, the Iranian context is nothing like the other contexts. I mean, the U.S. went in and did what they did, and the Iranians didn't even fire a single shot.
Yeah.
Like, you really think that the U.S. is going to get stuck in some kind of quote unquote quagmire? They're not interested. They're not going to be sending troops like they did to Afghanistan and so on. But the people of Iran are waiting to take over. There is a Shah. There is a legitimate political authority that has widespread support among the populace. There's nothing like this in the Afghanistan, Libyan, Iraqi, and Syrian context.
Well, and I guess that brings it kind of home with, we have to have those critical discussions, and it's unfortunate that you know the Middle East gets lumped as the Middle East when you have very different people over there, very different groups. There's a long history in each of those areas that it's not the same. It's not the same country to country, just as you're describing. But that gets so just buried in whatever people are screaming and shouting, and nobody's really paying attention.
Yeah, especially when you have people nowadays, especially in the West, because we're so spoiled in the West.
Yeah.
We're very, very spoiled because we have all these rights and we can do whatever we want and blah blah blah, and we lose focus. We lose focus, and especially with, like, you have this hyper leftist ideology, Marxist, straight up Marxist ideology. And so, surprise, all these people that are protesting are in many cases verbalizing word for word Marxist slogans. And of course, it becomes anti capitalism. So it becomes anti Western. And so now we have this situation where you have these people like silly things like Queers for Palestine.
Mm.
It's like, that's a perfect example of people who have lost their minds. Like, they've lost the plot completely, not realize they're protesting against something because it fits their cause. Anti-Western, anti this, right? Anti-Western in particular. It's all about resistance narratives. And you want to follow anything that's anti-authority. So even these groups who normally wouldn't belong to any kind of mainstream, well, since these groups, they'll bring in all the labor types, and that's why you get QP guy protesting against, whatever. Like, you see this now overlap between leftists and Islamists. And now they all happen to be on the same team. With the leftists being completely oblivious to the fact that if the Islamists took over, you would be annihilated too.
You'd be the first to go.
You'd be annihilated. Like, these people have, it's just shocking to me the level of ignorance that they have. And it's because they're just there to sling their slogans, right? Because that's what they're accustomed to. There's no real understanding of the topics.
So maybe just kind of as we come to the end of the time here, I wanted to get just from you, is there certain sources that people could go to read that you think are, like, either it's people or outlets or media that you would say are somewhat down the middle, balanced, give a good perspective, at least speak to the critical side of things? Like, who do you go to yourself?
I go to me. And you should just follow me. I'll give you the good stuff, the real stuff.
I'll have all your links up for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. Like, you have to know what to take and from whom.
Mm.
And that's really what it comes down to. So it's like mainstream media, and obviously we're well past the days of their monopoly of where it was top down. They could tell us basically what we should believe. I mean, everybody knows this now. Like, we all go to social media for our news. And what does that even mean, going to social media? Like Instagram, like formerly known as Twitter, LinkedIn, right? Well, even though that person that you're reading, what's their perspective? What's their background? So we need to now have a very critical eye and really focus on like, okay, why am I looking at this person's stuff? Why am I interested in what they're saying? Is it because it's just because it aligns with my view?
Mhm.
Or is it because there's actually an informed view? And are you even the type of person who is able to process things that go against what you believe? And are you able to read through it and say, okay, I want to understand why this person has this opinion? How did they come to this opinion? What's their methodology? What is it that they. So, this is what's required for us to get, quote unquote, the right news. It's no longer, I'm going to read this article, like I'm going to read this paper, or nobody reads papers anymore, right? But, CNN, right? BBC, CBC, take your pick. A lot of these, that mainstream news, it's going to push out a certain type of content, but like real analysis, who's making that analysis? And what perspectives are they coming from? Is this person writing an article about how, you know, is it being used to be anti-Trump because you're opposed to Trump?
Yeah.
Well, that's a bias, obviously, right? Or is this person writing this because they're Israeli and they don't believe that, I mean, they believe Israel is all rainbows and lollipops, right? Okay, I'm gonna see it for what that is, and so I'm gonna look for people that can, you know, take both sides in one sense. Like recently, I've been following Ahmed Fouad Al Khatib, I think his name is, Realign for Palestine, um, and he's very critical of the Israeli government, Netanyahu, and so on. But very anti-Hamas. He himself is Palestinian. He has many family members that were killed in the strikes by Israel on his family members. So he can talk about two things, right? Like you can have that
Yeah.
tension. It's okay to be in a state of tension. It's not like everything is going to be exactly the way you believe and the way you think, right? That's not reality. You are just your own individual person. You may have certain views that are in common with others, but others you will not,
Mhm.
right? So if anything, if anyone can learn anything from this conversation, is be critical, like be very critical of yourself, even, right? Like, why am I looking at this stuff? Why am I going to this stuff, right? How can I let me look at something else and see why I don't believe this? You know, because ABC, these are my criteria for which, for why this is unreliable or partially reliable. Or you don't need to, just because you read something and you agree with it, it doesn't need to be like, truth with a capital T, right? Like,
Yes.
it's okay. Like, I mean, it's like, good to know, right? I think it's an Aristotle quote. The true sign of an intelligent person is to be able to entertain an argument without necessarily feeling the need to accept it or reject it.
Mm. Mhm.
It's very difficult for people to do that. When you're having conversations with others about, tricky topics, you can kind of say, you know what? I need a few days to process that. And while I'm processing that, I'm going to go and study up some
Yes.
more things about that.
The
So I don't want to
24-hour
talk about
rule.
it now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about it now to the nth degree, because you probably just want me to agree with what you're saying, which is why most people have conversations, I think, on these topics. Just shut it down and say, yeah, interesting, good to know. What are your thoughts on the Israel Palestine issue? People might ask you. And it's like, well, it's a very complicated issue. I'm not going to give my opinion now because I'm still researching it and talking about it and blah, blah, blah. What do you need to research? It's a genocide. Well, some people say it is, some people say it's not.
Mhm.
There are different opinions out there. So this is what we need to train ourselves to do.
Yeah, you know what? Actually, with how you started that, and you said I go to me. Uh, I think that is actually probably what most people need to be able to do is to go to themselves, and they have to have the critical eye. If you can't trust yourself to have that, to do that, like you're lying to yourself, well, everyone else is gonna lie to you too. So you have to be able to trust yourself when it comes to analyzing these things before you put yourself out there and get caught on camera screaming and shouting some crazy statements.
Yeah, that you don't even know the meaning of, like, these kids that are just
Yeah.
insane where we've come, man. Globalize the intifada. It's like, do
Mm,
you know what intifada meant and what it was all about? Now it's like it's a chant now. It's like it's allowed. It's legit.
yeah.
This is where we're at.
Man, we're just coming up to the end of the time. I really appreciate having you on here and talking some sense to the world here, 'cause it's crazy, and I'm on the front lines of a lot of it. So I see this stuff point blank, and you know what? It's nice to be able to have a discussion such as this, because it's actually very hard to find, even within our own police service. There's people who will go back and forth, and it gets real tense. And it's seriously missing that ability to sit down with somebody and actually discuss this stuff. I recommend that people do follow you and look at some of the articles that you put out and some of the analysis and things that you offer, because they don't have to believe it. That's their choice. But at least they get some sort of critical eye on it, and then they can take that away and they can decide, is this for me? Do I want to look further into other topics? But that's a choice that we need people to be making more so. Even with our last federal election, I think a lot of stuff was missing out of that. I talked to my own parents, and and they just go like, Trump bad. I'm like, but why? I always ask them that. Why? No real answer. Because he's mean. What the hell does that mean? And you know what? Well, look at what everybody's been doing when they've been nice. He just says the stuff plain as day that everybody else is doing behind the scenes. But that's a discussion for another time, I guess. But yeah, give you a chance here. Where can people find you, follow you? Where do they find your work?
Yeah, I'm only on LinkedIn. Don't have time for the cesspool that is social media out there. Yeah, I don't even enable comments on my posts. I'm not
Hmm.
here to have a discussion with people. Frankly, I don't care about your opinion. I'm kidding. No, I mean, anyways, I'm only on LinkedIn. That's the best place to find me.
Yeah. And the Spy Museum. People got to go
And
check
the
it out.
Spy Museum. Yes.
Oh.
Yes, you should. Do what others do and take a selfie with yourself with me on the screen and send it to me
Yes.
saying, "Hey, I'm visiting you in the Spy Museum." So,
Very cool.
yeah.
Hey, Mubin, I really appreciate you being on here today, as always. And I'll have to get you back sooner than 2 years. I
Yes,
didn't even
sir.
realize it was
Sir.
that long.
Thank you, Nathan, for what you do as well on a daily basis outside of the podcast. So,
Yeah, you bet. Hey, everyone. Thanks for listening in and following along with the discussions. Be sure to click the follow or subscribe button on your respective listening platform. Also, check out the Quiet Professional on X and Instagram under TQP780. And most importantly, please share where you can. Everyone has a part to play in getting these education and information pieces out there, so pass it along. Thanks again.